thank NASSCOM for having me at this event, and it's been, I think, for a couple of years I've been trying to schedule speaking on something or other. Came in the way, and this year I'm finally able to do it. And the topic I'm going to talk about today is a familiar one for many of you who heard me. It is the deep technology R&D capability, skill development, know-how development, all of that we need to do in India to really produce a broad-based tech ecosystem. Let me first talk about what is our problem that I see in India today. Okay, we have a lot of startups, we have a lot of talent. The situation is vastly better than even 5 years ago, and definitely differently compared to 10 years ago. And there was not much of a startup ecosystem at all, but now there's a thriving, huge ecosystem. And we still have one serious gap that I see, which is that we are still, I would call it, bimodal for our in our distribution of startups or distribution of things. One, you have some really sophisticated technologies being worked on in some very small number of companies, and then a very broad mass of companies where there is really no serious tech happens. And we have applied, we seem to think, for example, from the software services, the next stage, we are going into edtech and fintech and a lot of application up in the top layer of the application stack, consumer-oriented services like fintech. Those are important, but also important is the lower layers of the stack, where deeper into the technology stack. And everything from your semiconductors all the way, of course, fabs, to then operating systems, databases, all of these are important. And I'm going to argue why that is important, actually, for India to shine. And first of all, let me say that this bimodal, where you have a very few companies working on very sophisticated technology, and then companies that are up in the tech stack, what it produces is lack of participation in technology by the broad mass of Indians. And that's still the reality today, that if you take our citizens, vast numbers of them are merely consumers of technology. They're not actually participating in any of the technology creation. And this has a serious implication for long-term sociology. And if you want to see what happens, you can see in the US, the political dysfunction and the whole split of the coast versus the flyover states. A lot of that come from that similar disconnect. And we are going to get that here if we don't broad base our technology know-how and capabilities. And to do that, we have to draw our people into producing the more of the technologies we consume ourselves. And that's vital for our broader participation as society, given our population. I mean, as of now, for example, 24 million babies are born in India every year. Keep that number in mind. And this is actually good news compared to 5 years ago, when 27 million babies were born. So we have actually come down, but we have still 24 million kids born. Comparatively, the US produces 4 million babies a year. Even China is at about 13 or 14 million. So China is about approximately half our level right now. So for comparison, we have to produce twice as many jobs as China to keep up with our number of kids born, which pretty much calls for doing any and every activity that we consume. And that is how we have to do it. That is the only way to do it. So we need a broad-based technology revolution in India. And that's the only way to make that revolution durable and not fall victim to this social conflict arising from extreme inequality. And then there is another reason. Take, for example, something like a database technology or fab technology, any of these. We need to train our talent in those technologies. And to train that, universities, I don't believe, are useful at all. In fact, we have had all these engineering institutions all over India. And for example, in our own state, in Tamil Nadu, you have 400 plus engineering colleges. In every small town, everywhere there is an engineering college. And they have been there for 30 years. The only thing missing is there's no local industry. In fact, I was in a convocation in Sastra, which is a major university near Tanjavur. And I mentioned how that entire district has no industry to speak of, even though Sastra is a major technology university for the last 30 years. So all that the university has become is a vacuum cleaner of talent rather than enable any local technology scene. And this is not very good for the district either, because you can visibly see the economic plight, and my own native village is there. The economic plight is actually getting worse and worse. You can see a dichotomy between Chennai and Bangalore versus these rural areas. Now that I am a rural citizen, I can see this very visibly. So I'm even more determined that we have to actually broad base our technology capability as a nation. And for this, we have to work on really core technologies all the way, everything we consume. And I do mean it. And that's, in fact, today at ZOHO, we launched our alternative to WhatsApp. We call it Aratai. Aratai is chit chat in Tamil. And we launched it because we know that if we get on this now, I don't expect that we'll dethrone WhatsApp anytime soon, but we'll definitely be there. We'll be there 10 years, 20 years, whatever, how long it takes to gain a strong footing in this market. So, and that is the only way to, and we'll teach ourselves the know-how, advanced know-how we need in all of these areas. We are using those products, so we have to have the know-how. That is my ideology in this. And we very much need this in operating systems, in databases, in browsers, in semiconductors, in MRI machines, in everything we need. That's the only way to generate the jobs to keep our own population employed. That's a given. Okay, that is. So ultimately, our demand for the products that we cannot make will enslave us. So that's something that we have to internalize this lesson. That our very demand for the products that we cannot ever make would enslave us. And this will work for small countries because they can trade with something, but very large countries like India have no option but to be reasonably self-reliant on all this. We have to have the know-how in almost every area we consume. And China already has realized it. We have not yet realized it in India, and we have to realize this. And I will give some examples of these to illustrate this idea on how to go about this. I'd say in any technology area, I'd start with something very simple that's tractable with a small team without a lot of prior background or experience. For example, if you are going to get into medical equipment, and we are actually ZOHO, we are investing in medical equipment, we'll first go into diagnostic tools before we go into actual thing that treats the patient. So diagnostic tools are easier to do, and there is also easier to get to market and easier to sell too. And obviously something that treats the patient, that's direct line of attack. So there is a lot more of a higher technology barrier to surmount. So it's important to keep that in mind. So diagnostic versus treatment thing in medicine. And similarly, if you're going into databases, do database monitoring before you do the databases, and or database administration tools before you build databases. And ZOHO, we have actually built a lot of these monitoring and such similar tools. And we learned about databases, we learned about operating systems, we learned about a lot of technologies by building these things. Then we started to build a lot of it ourselves then. And in a similar way, you are going into engineering equipment. I would start with simple handheld power tools kind of thing before going into complex equipment, complex capital equipment, capital goods. And by the way, speaking of capital goods, I visited quite a few textile mills in the last 3 months. And I found that essentially most of the equipment is imported, spinning mills, all of that. There are some Indian suppliers, but still what you see on the factory floor is German, Swiss, Japanese. And these are fairly sophisticated textile equipment, and we have absolutely zero know-how on many of these. And we are importing very large number of them. One district alone, I was told, has 120 spinning mills, almost filled with imported equipment. And we think that we sell textiles to buy these machines, but we cannot sell enough textiles to bridge that gap. The technology, that deficit we run, and that textile operations are very low margin. So it's a race to the bottom. So unless we master the technology, we cannot actually pay our own workforce better. So we'd be stuck as a low-wage nation unless we master these critical technologies like the robotic spoolers and all of that go into spinning mills. And that is, again, to me, technology capability. And you cannot start there. You cannot say that I will start there and build it. you have to start with something smaller, much smaller, enabling technology. So study those equipment and build something smaller, and from there go into the larger scale. And this is the approach that we have been taking in ZOHO all along for the 25 years. We build something like monitoring, simpler technologies that are easier to master, build the skills, the know-how, and then build more complex products. So our Aratai, the instant messaging itself, it has taken us about 10 years of investment in that area. Now we can actually build these, and our voice video capabilities are quite good now, actually. On Aratai, you will see this voice and video capabilities, which itself has taken about 8 or 10 years of R&D that has gone into various products that we built. And Aratai itself comes from our ZOHO Click platform, which is an enterprise messaging platform, which competes with Slack. And we are repurposing a lot of the technology towards a faster scale consumer class product. So we have an enterprise product, which is the scale requirement is lower, and then we are building a vast, much more larger scale consumer product using the same know-how and technologies. And this is similar in ZOHO Mail that we have done. And we actually have a very strong mail monitoring, understanding mail protocols, all of that. And from that foundation, we built our own mail servers, our own spam, anti-spam software, all of that, spam detection and filtering and anti-fraud. A lot of that know-how we had to build in-house. And similarly, for example, DDoS, denial of service. And we had to build the expertise in-house. And we initially bought that capability, and then later we brought it in-house. We actually learned to build a lot of that in-house. So this is how we have scaled up in our deep technology know-how. And we have a strong labs group with AI, and we are moving into some hardware solutions. We are building compilers, we are building databases. A lot of the enabling technologies in software now we are building. And in the next 10 years, you will see us blossom into very many different areas. A deep technology company, all built in India. And this model is important to do in every sector. Okay? And in textiles to various types of capital goods involved in automotive, all of this. And the semiconductor fabs, that's a favorite topic of mine, where India imports essentially all our chips today. Almost nothing is fabricated here. And these things are, China has spent 100 billion catching up in this, and they now are able to serve about 20% of their needs after $100 billion of investment. So India is at 0% of our needs today. And we still have to do this. There is no other go for a country like India of scale, of our size and scale. We cannot not have fabs here. So that is a national priority, and we have to do this. And we have to figure out how to sequence this. And my own suggestion would be there, build, for example, the chips that go into your washing machines and your microwave ovens and the like don't have to be the same class of technologies, semiconductor fab, as that goes into the iPhone, latest iPhone. These are much less technology. And so actually we can learn to build those chips, fabricate those fabs that are in the lower scale. And then we actually have to move up the ladder. And that's one way to do it. That's how I would think about the problem. And in ZOHO itself, one of the questions that come up is app development platform. Yes, we do. We have ZOHO Creator, which is an app development platform. And we are building more sophisticated platforms and cloud infrastructure. A lot of that we are building. Our own, and all the ZOHO apps are built on our own cloud platforms. We don't rely on AWS or G Cloud or Azure, any of that. We built this to actually teach ourselves those capabilities, and now we are bringing some of that to market. We launched something called ZOHO Catalyst, which is a cloud development platform. So there is a lot of these technologies that we have mastered in-house, and we are going deeper into each of these. So our Catalyst will evolve, our Creator will evolve, and we are launching, you saw the Aratai IM launched, and this year is going to be a very productive year in terms of new launches. You'll see a lot more of these go on. And all of these have been in our labs, in our R&D for the last several years. And for example, we actually have now an AV platform that can scale to thousands of simultaneous viewers, all of that now. And this type of streaming, all that we can actually do much better today. So these are all things that we have mastered. And that in order to come here, though, we had to start with something a lot simpler. 20 years ago, a lot of our technologies were a lot simpler, and we started that deliberately. And that's actually another important thing that I want to mention. It requires, as an engineer, to keep your ego in check, because all of us want to solve only the latest and greatest problem. But if you are in a small town context, you need to create jobs. It might be useful to look at something more modest and enabling technology, and to teach yourself the skills, teach your team the skills. And you have to keep your ego in check in order to do this. In fact, a lot of progress comes from us, as our sages would say, letting go of the ego, that technical ego, technology ego, saying I have to work in this latest one. And I can work on something that is an enabling technology, maybe in the background, master it, and then build up the skills. That attitude, I'm going to suggest, might be very helpful as well. So these are the things that I wanted to say. And I do want to see a lot more broad-based technology development companies in India, deeper technology. For example, I was looking at a binocular yesterday. One of my visitors brought one, and I looked at it. It's as usual, it's made in China, and German or US know-how. And I asked, could anybody in India make it? And the answer is no. I don't think that level of glass and lens technology we have today. We have to do this. Somebody has to do this. That's a good product to look at. And then there are binoculars with camera attachments. Again, we would have to buy it. So those are all the things that everything we buy today, whatever we want to buy, I would look at it as a potential market opportunity for an entrepreneur, particularly from entire states of India have almost zero tech footprint today. So those all have to get started on this. So I hope to see a lot more of this. I hope NASSCOM would play a vital role in spreading this. So with this, thank you very much, and namaskar.